Welcome to the Monash Degrees and Careers in Counseling webinar information session. My name is Jennifer. I am from the Faculty of Education, Monash University here in Melbourne, Australia. And tonight I'm very honored to be here with my lovely colleagues, Lisa Tinney from the Master of Counselling and Graduate Certificate of Counselling course. She is the course leader. And we also have Jamie here, who is a very essential part of our professional placement team. Thank you, Jamie. And also, we've got one of our lovely alumni, Ronald Jang here, who did our course a few years back and is very excited to share with you all his study experience and his career journey so far. So thank you, Ronald, for joining us tonight. And also I've got Ivy and Patrick from my team, the Future Students team, who are very happy to take any questions that you may have in the Q&A. So feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A just by clicking on the Q&A function in the Zoom window, I think, and you'll be able to type your questions there, and we'll either answer your questions by typing or one of us will be reading out your question and answer it live here during the webinar. We'll do that at the end of the session. And let me just share my screen so that we can have the slideshow with us. But maybe I think I'll do the acknowledgement of country first. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which Monash University stands, including the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nations, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which you are joining today and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples across Australia and First Nations peoples around the world. And now I hand over to my lovely colleague Lisa here, who is the counseling course leader, to introduce the course and talk about why study counseling at Monash. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Lisa Tinney, as Jen said, and I've been counselling probably for about 30 plus years and working at Monash for about 18. And I'm acting course leader for the MOC and the grad cert in counselling at the moment. So my job is just to run you through the basics of what the course involves and why you might want to study with us. So Jen, if you can hit the next slide for me, that'd be great. So the question is, why study counselling? I suspect that most of you, in thinking about that, your answer will have something to do with wanting to help other people, wanting to make a difference, wanting to spend your time doing something that's going to contribute back to people's progress or to the community. So within that, there's tons of different goals that counselling can achieve. Some of them are listed here, and I'll talk about them as we go. I think the course originally started out as a skills course to help people who were already in the helping profession. So whether they be teachers or nurses or somebody in an HR field, the course was originally developed to just give some counselling skills to a lot of the people already working in a helping profession, but to just sort of give them some theory and some more practice and understanding of the skills that are helpful in those professions. It's sort of morphed over the years. I mean, we still have people that come for that reason and just do it as an adjunct to another career, but it's morphed over the years into very much a skills-based and theoretical course that enables people to become full-on counsellors and to work in a counselling job. I guess the other thing I really like about counselling is it's so adaptable. You can work in so many different fields. And when I think about the different fields that I've worked in, it runs from education, primary and secondary school, and now university level. I've worked in community health. I've worked in government. I've worked in IVF counselling. I've worked in private practice counselling. Like, there's so many different areas that you can go into. And so there's usually, whatever your interest is, you can usually find some work in a field that's exciting for you. And the other thing is you can change. You can change between fields, throughout your career, as I've done. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a career, but it can be a career. You can do it part-time, you can do it full-time, it's a great job. A lot of counselling places work at night. So a lot of your work can be at night if you do something else through the day, or if you look after other people through the day. It's a terrific job in that sense. So let's crack on to the next one, Jen. This slide is sort of showing us that the trend over the last few years has been that more and more people are studying counselling in Australia. The trend to study and work as a counsellor is increasing. And I think that's reflective of the fact that we need more people in this helping profession out there working in the world. One of the boom areas is schools. Now a lot of schools have counsellors working in them to help primary and secondary kids as they, try and figure out their lives and their studies and get a balance. But there's lots and lots of different professions that are turning to counselling, and perhaps maybe not so much relying on social work and psychology or psychiatry as they have over the years. So there's sort of a growing niche there for counsellors. The other thing too, of course, is that the recent statistics, particularly from I think last year, the National Mental Health Workforce Strategy indicated that at any one time, half of us are going to be experiencing a mental health concern of some sort. So that's a lot of us that potentially need some support from a professional person to help us manage that and get through it. So with that increase in mental health issues amongst the population and in children and young people too, it's not just adults, we need to have enough people who can work in the field to help address this. That's where we come in. Maybe the next one now, Jen, I think. I didn't know this picture of me existed until this morning when I was looking at these slides, so that's a bit freaky, isn't it? But anyway, so what is counselling? I mean, you know this, but counselling is a private, confidential, usually, unless, there are limits to that, but for the most part, it's confidential. And it's a collaboration between you and your client. And here at Monash, we really, in our course, talk about evidence-based practice. So what are the skills that we know that work? What are the therapies that we know the research tells us are tried and true and effective with clients? And we'll work towards helping you get that balance of practice and theory. I think it's really important to have the theory behind you, but it's also really important in our programs that we can help you figure out how to implement that. And most of the tutors and lecturers that we have, I think all actually have got a history or still working in counselling. So there's lots of stories and experience that they have to, tell you about their lives counselling and how counselling works in real life. So it's that nice balance between theory and practice. And the goal, of course, is to help our clients get some insight and understanding of what's going, but also to act on that. How do I put that into action in my life to potentially change the way I think or feel or the way I behave in the world? That's sort of looking at it through a CBT lens, isn't it? But, thoughts, your cognitions, your feelings, emotions, and then how you conduct yourself in the world. We've got here mental health and wellbeing. Our focus really is on improving mental health and wellbeing in our clients. So when we talk about mental health, I always think about physical health, but related to the way you think, feel, and behave. So just like we need to look after our physical health, we also need to look after our mental health. And that's true of everybody. We all have to do that. I think in the past, psychology used to be largely about mental ill health, didn't it? Like a diagnosis or a condition. And so we sort of sometimes equate psychology with mental ill health. Then the positive psychology movement came along and said, hang on a minute, why does psychology and counselling have to be about ill health? Let's focus on positive psychology and look at positive mental health. And so perhaps that's where, counsellors might differ a little bit from traditional psychs in their work, in that our focus potentially may not be on the, diagnosis or the ill health, but more on promoting positive mental health and also well-being. So well-being, again, is just looking at two components. One, am I experiencing positivity in my life and good feelings, all the positive feelings as well as the negative, but that must have some positive. And in addition to that, how do I feel about my life? Do I feel like satisfied with what's happening in my life? So we're trying to promote as counsellors positive well-being. So am I feeling good? Am I connected to my society and to my environment? Do I have strong relationships with other people? Do I have a sense of purpose and meaning in my life? Do I have a sense of accomplishment in the things that I'm doing? And am I feeling strong and physically healthy in my body? So when you think about it like that, there's tons and tons and tons of proactive work around for counsellors out there in the community. And a lot of it can be in a preventative capacity too. One of the things we do is try and, in our course, do an overview of the whole lifespan, so that you get a chance to talk about, issues that might be relevant for little kids, for teenagers, for adults, but also for older people as well. So we try to look at the ethics of working with all those different age groups, and give you a bit of a taster of, a whole lot of different psychological theories and practices. Next one, Jen. So the Graduate Certificate of Counselling is 4 units, and I'll show you the layout in a second, make more sense when I do that. And it's just sort of a starting taster of counselling. And anyone you can start the Masters if you want, and then stop after 4 and leave with a grad cert in counselling. It's 6 months full-time, or you can take longer if you want to. And you can do it on campus or you can do it online. So if you do it online, you're working as a external student. So that can be really useful for people who work through the day and want to do this at night. Again, applications go in. We take 2 intakes a year. So this one will close in April, but we have another one again halfway through the year. Do you want to go to the next one, Jan? Yeah, good on you, thanks. So the Master of Counselling incorporates those first 4 subjects I was talking about in the grad cert, but it goes on to have a whole host of other ones. And usually we do that over a 2-year period, but you can do it part-time and you can do it full-time and take less, or you can do it part-time and take longer. Sometimes, and Jamie will talk about this more when he talks about the placement, but sometimes you can stretch it out and do your placements after you've done the coursework if you want to. So the placement, as Jamie will tell you, is 200 professional hours experience, and that is in addition to the coursework, but you can do it after if you want. So there's a lot of flexibility with the timing and the planning of how you put the course together, because we really, we acknowledge that most people will be working and, living lives and doing busy things. So you can't always devote a full-time, attendance to your course. So a lot of people do this part-time. I think the other thing worth noting here is that our course is accredited by ACA and PACFA. So these are the 2 psychological bodies that support counselling, and it's great to have registration with these because it just gives you a bit of credibility. At this stage, counselling isn't accredited by AHPRA, but we're hoping it will be in the future. So this is probably the most important thing at the moment, is to get accreditation with the professional bodies, and we have accreditation in Singapore too. So yeah, that gives you good standing. Again, 2 intakes a year. And the other thing to say too is if you need to put it on hold and, take some time off, you can do that as well. So we really do encourage flexibility so that, to help you get the course done. Do you want to go to the next one, Jen? the sorts of careers you can go into, and I was trying to brainstorm about this morning and think about all the different careers that people end up in. And, Ronald, you might be able to talk more about this, where your fellow students ended up in their place, in their careers. But I certainly know people who are working in heaps of different fields. So there's a lot in schools, as I said. Sometimes people from their placements, they're offered opportunities for ongoing work. So that's really exciting if that happens. That's happened a lot to people in schools. I know somebody who was working in a placement with kids with autism spectrum conditions or with ADHD, and he ended up being offered a position to keep working there, which was exciting. Others that are working in suicide prevention or intervention or even postvention. Others that are working with family violence, family services. I've got a friend who's working as a counsellor in grief and bereavement, and she does a lot with pet bereavement, and she's interested in pet therapy as well. So I don't know, I think that's a little bit of a taster. Lots of different things. The other thing people sometimes do is get into policy making, because whether it's public health policy or school policies, because, in this course we'll talk a lot about, the broader picture and how the system affects the individual too. And so sometimes people get really fired up and excited about trying to, work on the policies that are around people to help ease the pressures for people. So that can be a great outcome. But yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities here for different, career pathways and variation, as I was saying before. Lots of opportunities to change and move. Thanks, Jen. So the first four are the four that I was talking about, 500, 1, 2, and 3, they form the grad cert. And that's just a basic grounding in counselling. So talking about the lifespan and how counselling might apply to different age groups and how that would differ over the different age groups. Counselling for change and transition is really mental health. So we're talking about different mental health symptoms and conditions and how you would recognise and manage or refer those. Ethics is a biggie, of course, because, there's tons of interesting ethical issues that pop up. So really important to be talking about that and referring back to our ethical code of conduct. And the last one, 5003, which is the one I'm chief examiner for, partial to, that's about counselling skills. So what are the things we actually say and do in a session that are going to contribute to effective counselling? Then the rest of these form the basis of the Master of Counselling. So you've got CBT, you've got ethics again, more advanced ethics that builds on the earlier one. Grief and trauma counselling is a relatively new one that we've added in, but it's a fantastic unit and very relevant because lots of places are crying out for people to work in the grief and trauma field. Contemporary counselling approaches is, a lovely way to talk about all the different therapies that are relevant for you as a counsellor, and how, again, it builds on my one, builds on the foundations about how you might be effective in your skills in counselling and how you can work on those and develop those. Emerging counsellor practice is a discussion about how you do your placement, how you cope with placement, the different pressures that placement provides, and ideally it runs alongside the 2 placement units or before it. Sometimes, depending on how you do it, it sometimes comes after, but it's usually talking about placement issues that might come up, ethics, code of conduct, well-being, supervision, all those sorts of things. And couples and groups and families counselling is as it sounds. It talks about how counselling may differ in those various modalities and the sorts of work you can get in those fields. Counselling in school years is another one of mine, and I love this. I'm biased, but it talks about development through childhood and adolescence, how counselling can help with them and the different ways you might do counselling, creative types of counselling that might be more exciting and appealing to kids or to adolescents that find it difficult to put things into words. talks a lot about brain development and developmental trauma that happens early and the impacts of that in later life. Learning and career counselling, again, fantastic unit that really helps you figure out, okay, I've done all this counselling stuff, so how am I going to get a job? And there's a job club that Doug runs, the director runs about, how do I put all this into practice and how do I get my CV going? How do I get my skills good at an interview? How do I get a job, basically? Diversity in counselling is another fairly new one, as is telehealth. Diversity in counselling is just, making sure that we're being inclusive of different populations and thinking about the different issues that arise in different situations. And then telehealth and technology is an important one too, because as you know, since the pandemic, a lot of our counselling work, a lot of everyone's work is done online now. So, in the past, we rarely did counselling online. Nowadays, it happens all the time. So we have to think about how can we convey our empathy and our concern and our sense of ourselves on the internet online. Now, these little blank bits here are really just indicating that you can get exemptions for different parts of the course depending on where you've come from. So to get in, you just need a degree, and then depending on what sort of degree you've done, you may end up doing the whole 96-point structure. If you've done a lot of counselling or maybe not counselling, but psychology courses or teaching courses or other courses that you have covered some of this stuff, then you'll be able to get exemptions from that when you apply. I think that's all I've got. I'm out of time, so I'll stick around and answer any questions that you have at the end. But over to you, Jamie. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. I was just typing an answer to someone who'd put a question in the Q&A, so sorry for the delay there. My name's Jamie. My name's Jamie Stafford. I'm the professional experience advisor for the Master of Counselling. One of a few people in our small team that basically our job is to not only assist students in sourcing their own placements if they have a particular placement in mind, but also we work closely with placement providers, including primary and secondary schools, to then advertise placements to our student cohort once you're enrolled in those specific units, so that you can apply for those placements as a part of the enrollment. So basically, we're a team of clinical and administrative staff. Our team consists of people who are clinical, so people who themselves either work as counselors or psychologists who can support you from a clinical standpoint throughout your placement, and also administrative staff such as myself. And basically what that means is the day-to-day logistics of helping you search for a placement, helping you secure a placement, and also helping you complete your placement. For the placement units, which I'll go through in greater detail on one of the next slides, there's no classes, so it's entirely via Moodle is how you engage with us. We also have an inbox that we keep track of where you can also submit email inquiries, but basically you don't have to go to classes. Your Moodle site will open during O Week, and from that point onwards, during your enrollment in the placement units, you'll have access to our team and all of the information that we provide, and you can also ask us questions on the go. We're obviously, the students are one of our most important stakeholders, but we also manage the relationships with our placement hosts on an ongoing basis. And we keep both students and placement hosts up to date with anything that changes along the way. So over the past few years, we've had quite a few changes. We also make sure that the paperwork that you need to complete between yourself and the placement host, when you're on an approved placement, you'll have a placement agreement or a placement arrangement with that host that outlines what the responsibilities of the host is and what the responsibilities of the student is while on placement. And we'll provide all of that to you via Moodle, and also teach you about in-place approval processes, which again, not something that you have to worry about until you're enrolled in the placement unit, but in-place is basically our central database where all of the Faculty of Education placement records are kept. While you're on placement, you'll still have access to our team so that we can help you with your progress. Things like how to complete your logbook so that you're getting through your hours, all of that type of thing. Anything else that arises during placement, you can speak to someone within our team. You can also book in online meetings for one-on-one assistance. And basically, in general, we act as the liaison between the students, the placement hosts, and the university to make sure that our students have the best chance of getting through the placement unit successfully. You can move to the next slide if you like, Jen. So this is a snapshot of what the placement units look like. They're 2 units, but they're very much one experience, if that makes sense. So EDF 5066 is the first placement unit that you'd be enrolled in. And in order to move on to 5067, you obviously need to complete and pass that particular unit. The minimum requirement as of right now, and this may change in the future, so please take this information as being current information, but if you're deciding to enroll in 2027 or later on, this could change. To pass 5066 and move on to 5067, you have to secure a placement and also complete a minimum of 20-hour non-contact hours. So for this year, the current students that are enrolled in 5066, this has actually changed. It's no longer either or, it's both. So you have to secure a placement and complete 20 hours of non-contact. The units are structured and designed to make that hurdle as easy as possible. So for example, the 20 non-contact hours, you can complete those by doing suicide prevention training, assist mental health. There's different webinars that we actually have available to you in Moodle that if you were to do all of those that we advertise on Moodle, you would get through the 20 non-contact. So that even though it's a hurdle requirement, it's something that we set you up to be able to do and all you would need to do is basically follow the instructions in Moodle. Securing a placement, you have all of the enrollment in 5066 to do that. So it's not like you're enrolled in 5066 and you've got 2 weeks to find something. You've actually got the entire teaching period of 5066, so 1 semester, to find a placement and get started. So yeah, so that hurdle requirement for 5066 to get into 5067, we make sure that that's as easy as possible and setting you up for success. So if you commence EDF 5066 in semester 1, you have the whole of semester 1 to complete the minimum requirements before progressing to 5067 in semester 2 of the same year. And then you have all of semester 2 to basically complete the balance of those requirements. With placements, like I said earlier, they're 2 separate units, but we think of them as one experience. If you were to secure a placement while you're enrolled in 5066, you can continue on through that placement, including semester breaks, all the way to the end of 5067. You don't have to have 2 separate placements, one for 5066, one for 5067. Even though they're separate units, they're the same experience, and you would be expected to complete placement with the same host across both units, including semester breaks. Jen, you can go to the next slide if you like. So this is a breakdown of the hour requirements and how they're broken down. So it's 200 hours in total, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of subgroups that go into that 200 hours. So 100 hours is client contact. So that's actually when you're counseling clients, whether that be in an individual setting, couples, families, group counseling. That's your actual contact work, your client contact work. And then 100 hours is made up of what we call non-contact hours. I spoke briefly about what non-contact hours were earlier, or what can be considered non-contact hours. So any type of professional development or webinars that you would do that assist in your growth as a counselor, that can be counted as non-contact and recorded in your logbooks. Of those 100 hours, 25 hours must be clinical supervision. Supervision is when you're meeting with, and for those of you that maybe already work in the profession, this is not something necessarily specific to university study. Once you're out working as a counselor in the field, you will continue to work with a clinical supervisor as a part of your journey. Lisa, correct me if I'm saying anything that's incorrect at any time. Thank you. So those 25 hours are a part of the 100 non-contact. So you only have to complete 75 of what we consider to be other. And other is the day-to-day admin of being a counselor, recording your case notes, doing any type of training, attending meetings, doing observation work where you're not the primary counselor, but maybe you're acting in an observation capacity. All of those things, plus many, many more, can be considered non-contact hours and count for those 75. of the contact hours on the left, you'll see that there's specific requirements on how much you can do of each. And to be really clear about this, you must do a minimum of 50 hours, either in an individual, couple, or family counseling setting. The maximum that you can do for group is 50, and the maximum you can do for phone counseling is also 50. So it doesn't mean that you have to do 50 hours of group and 50 hours of individual. It's minimums and maximums. And then whatever you do as whatever ratio you sort of come up with to get to that 100 client contact, you can do that as long as it's within those parameters. Something important to mention that has changed a little bit in the past, text-based counseling. So things like BetterHelp, if you were to do placement with BetterHelp and they had a text-based counseling function, as an example, that's not permitted as client contact. So phone counseling is kind of the minimum that you can do in regards to counseling that's not face-to-face. Face-to-face does include telehealth or video conferencing, but if you are looking to have accreditation with PAC, for example, they have their own requirements on the minimum of in-person face-to-face that you have to do if you're looking to get provisional membership or student membership with them. That's currently at 40, but that's not necessarily part of the course or the unit requirements from our end. That's something that PACFA have dictated if you would like to get membership with them. Jen, you can go to the next slide. So securing a placement, there's two main ways to do it. I touched on this briefly earlier. So we are in constant negotiation with placement hosts throughout Victoria and interstate. And when we source these opportunities, we'll advertise them in Moodle, and they're available to all students to apply for who are enrolled in the placement unit at that time. Because of where we are and where we're based, these are mostly in the Greater Melbourne area, but we do often sometimes have some in rural and remote areas within Victoria and occasionally interstate. No matter where you're based, we can work with you to find something, but that's option one. And then option two is if you have your own networks or contacts already, or there's a particular area that you would like to do your placement in, we can help you make those necessary approaches to those organizations. We'll have resources that you can use to help in those approaches, such as template introduction letters written by the course leader, so that when you do approach an organization for a placement, they don't necessarily view you as spam or just something different, that you're actually legit, you're a legit Monash student, and you'll have the documents to back that up. Which goes a long way into getting people to respond to you if you are going to go the find your own placement approach. I answered this in the Q&A to a student that asked it earlier, but if you're already working in sort of a counseling or mental health role and you want to do your placement in your workplace, you can do that, but you can only do up to 50% of your placement hours in your current workplace if you're currently working as a counselor. Where it says in certain cases up to 100%, that's usually when you could potentially be working for an organization in a non-counseling role, and that organization offers a counseling service that you can then do your placement with. In that case, because you're not doing placement in your employed role, even though it's within the same organization, that's the exception that we can make for students to do 100% of their hours in their workplace. Really common example of that is if you're working at a school as a teacher and their wellbeing team has capacity to host you for placement. They're two very separate, clearly separate roles. That would constitute an example of where you could do 100% of your placement hours in your workplace. That's it from me. Hope that was clear and concise. And if you have any questions, let us know, and we'll hand over to our alumni, Ronald.
Thanks, everyone. And most importantly, thanks for inviting me too. Gosh, this really gives me a deja vu of attending one of those Monash tutorials 2 years ago. Yes, so hi everyone, my name is Ronald. I'm currently an alumni in Monash as I have finished my Master of Counselling course back in 2024. I'm currently working as a secondary college school counselor in Officer Secondary College full-time. So a little bit of my story, why I chose Monash initially, it was right after I suppose I completed my bachelor degree in psychology honors program in the Australian National University. I was facing, I suppose, a range of options, but this might sound actually quite contradictory because the moment I kind of graduated, I actually first did tell myself that the last thing I wanted to do in the future would be seeing clients every single day. However, amongst all the options, I actually eventually landed on the Monash Master of Counselling program. Like I would admit, there was, I suppose, a lot of anxiety there, and then I was a bit unsure about coming in here, but I suppose I was having that open mind to just try things out. Yeah, and then so my Monash study experience was really, really amazing. So, like, I suppose the biggest thing I feel like that's actually quite important for learning in the Master of Counseling program would be the space to study on your own, and most importantly, would be the self-reflection. So, this comes from both the learning experience, let's say in lectures, in tutorials, as well as the placement experience, because the placement experience itself really will give you a lot. Um, and any highlights, I would say, I'll definitely say that CBT tutorial actually. So yes, I was actually directly taught by Lisa. Yes, she was my CBT tutor, and then I really enjoyed that group assignment. I kind of did it with a few of my friends there, and that was absolutely amazing. Yes, in case you get the opportunity to try out Lisa's tutorials, absolutely amazing, by the way. So when it comes to placement experiences, I did my placement in another secondary college in a suburb in Melbourne as well. So my supervisor was absolutely amazing and supportive. So I completed both my 100 contact and 100 non-contact hours over there. I did a range of work. There was intake, triage, and there was also a range of, I suppose, opportunities for individual and even sometimes small group counseling too. So during my placement experience, I got to see and provide mental health support for a great range of individuals, be it, let's say, study concerns, friendship concerns, and then also there were, I suppose, also witness cases of, I suppose, domestic violence, as well as supporting students who are also neurodivergent. So I believe that has provided me with the experience that I require to further go into my current full-time career. Any challenges that I've encountered while studying, how did you overcome them? I would definitely say that um, the biggest challenges within learning counseling would be, I suppose, how that knowledge reflects onto you as a person. And during that counseling process, I suppose how you and your clients' interactions reflect you as a person. You start to notice a lot about yourself. What are your assumptions? And I suppose what do you think that things has might have always gone that way, but actually this is not the case for many people around you. You start to develop new knowledge and you start to develop new insight and you start to develop new views about your world. So I would definitely say that by encountering, I suppose, challenges leads to reflections. And this kind of reflections is also a very important opportunity for personal growth as well. And how did your Monash degree help with your career? Absolutely. As Lisa and Jamie have both mentioned, the Master of Counselling degree provides you recognition under the Australian Counselling Association or PACFA, which is almost essential in the current job market to find yourself a job as a full-time counselor in many settings. So, for example, such as schools, suicide intervention prevention, clinical settings, disability, etc. So having a Master of Counseling degree will be absolutely critical in terms of landing yourself in a similar industry. So yes, I suppose I understand that maybe I'm speaking a bit too fast, but I understand I packed a lot of information in there. But thanks everyone for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Ronald, for sharing your study experience and your professional career experience. And I'm just amazed to hear that did you relocate from Canberra to Melbourne to study the course, or did you do it online?
Yes, I did relocate after 7.5 years in Canberra, so that was actually
Wow.
a really good decision. So let's be honest, Canberra it wasn't all that interesting of a city, especially after 7.5 years. So yep.
Oh, yeah, I'm just so glad to hear that you made a big decision to relocate, but you were rewarded by that brave decision. And yeah, I just really thank you for sharing your positive experience and for being so generous with your time. We know that you're a very, very busy professional. So yeah, thank you for giving us your time and sharing your experience. And we do have some questions in the Q&A there that definitely would be great for you to touch on a little bit. But we will do that after the entry requirements part. So I'll definitely ask you to answer some of the questions later on. Thank you, Ronald. So the Master of Counseling entry requirements are listed here on the slides, as you can see, and as Lisa mentioned earlier, that we do have 3 entry levels depending on your previous study experience or your work experience. And also, just to remind you that these entry requirements are the minimum entry requirements. The course, we do have a ranking process in place, which is why we don't currently we won't give offers until we have received all the applications by the deadline and then rank everybody against these criteria. So everybody will be assessed against the same entry criteria, and basically you need a 65% average in your bachelor's degree or your other qualifications that we accept, such as master's, bachelor, honors degree, or graduate certificate or graduate diploma. If you have a degree in a relevant field, and that includes, but is not limited to social work, psychology, and counseling, you should be given credit into the course, and that will reduce your study duration. So normally the course is 2 years for students who have got 0 previous relevant experience or previous degree. Then you'll be looking at the 2-year normal standard duration. But if you do have 2 years full-time relevant work experience or a degree in a relevant field, or if you have a higher level degree such as an honors degree or a master's, then you also be given credit. If you come from an non-English speaking background, then you most likely need to sit an English language test to prove your English proficiency in order to get into the course. And if you take the IELTS test, you need a score of 7 overall with no individual band lower than 7.0. And if you're worried about, I did a bachelor in something not listed here, not social work, not psychology or counseling, may I still get credit? Just apply and the admissions team will assess. There will be other areas that could also be eligible for credit, so you need to apply and we'll assess every single application. For the Graduate Certificate of Counseling, it requires a lower average. You need a 60% average rather than 65. So a lot of students use this one as a pathway into the master's if they haven't got the 65% average. Completing the graduate certificate does not guarantee that you'll be accepted into the master's, but it does give you the foundation of the discipline. And if you did receive a 65% average in the graduate certificate here, you will be eligible to apply for the master's. Plus, it will give you 1 year of credit, so you only need to study the master's in 1 year. And the English language requirements are the same for the graduate certificate. So how do you apply? You apply directly online to Monash. Applications for semester 2 are currently open and are expected to close on the 30th of April. Late applications we usually don't accept unless you can show us, you had some like technical failure which was outside of your control. Then we will be able to take that into consideration. But usually the deadline is the deadline, the 30th of April for semester 2. Someone was asking about semester 1 intake 2027. So applications usually will open right after this. So usually, the 1st of May or a bit after that. And it will close it will usually closes on in October. Yes. Um, and yeah, so and if you realize that the course is not open yet, feel free to contact us if you didn't see that. Sorry, I did need to make a correction here. I just realized semester one intake usually applications open in August, not May. So yes, I need to make that correction. But yeah, usually for semester one intake, applications open from August through to October. Yep, not May. That it might be too early. Yes. So all applications will be assessed and ranked after the closing date. So we won't be issuing offers on a rolling basis. All offers should be released around the same time. And this for this intake, we're looking at a little bit after May. So it could be um, the middle or the end of May or early June. But for international students, because you need time to apply for visa, usually we issue international offers first, and usually that's in end of May. Master of Counselling, there are different entry levels, so you will be advised which entry level you're admitted into and how long you need to complete the program. So that is how to apply. And now we can move on to Q&A. So I can see there's a lot of questions in there. Thanks everyone for asking those great questions. I think I'll ask Donald to address one of the school. There was a question about careers, I think, or unless oh no, okay, sorry, I just missed it, but I can see it now. So one anonymous attendee, Ronald, asked a question about school well-being counseling. So I think you marked that question to be answered live. Is there anything you'd like to add there about school well-being counseling?
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. So yet again, I will be quite consistent with this one. So currently, I believe all the government, at least all the government schools, will be looking for a certified counselor, a registered counselor to apply in this role. And also at the same time, because school counselors, as a matter of fact, can come in from many fields. So you might be competing with, first of all, of course, other counselors, and then maybe sometimes even psychologists and sometimes even social workers as well. So yes, definitely having that registration will definitely back you up here. So personally, I would strongly recommend taking a master's degree for this one.
Thank you, Ronald. So Grace asked a question, for someone with 20 years commercial experience, what are the options to transition after completing the course? Any cases to share? Lisa or Jamie, do you know any students of yours that have made a big career change into counseling after, decades of working somewhere else?
Definitely. Sorry, Jamie, do you want to? Oh, I'll go first and then you can add in if you want.
Sure.
Absolutely. People do the sea change thing, and like I had one woman who's just graduated now. She had 20 years in advertising. I was trying to think of the word advertising. And she suddenly thought, I'm sick of this. I don't want to do this anymore. And she's just finished the course. She's a really dynamic student. She's just set up her own private practice and she's going for it. So she was great. I had somebody last semester who had done archaeology, their own archaeology business with their partner. And she's also decided, no, change. I need something different. And she did the course and she was hoping to work either in her own practice eventually, but maybe do something else first, to get some experience in a, system or in a team first before she set up her own. So she went off and they've both got jobs, those two that I'm thinking of. But it does happen a lot. Even if it's not 20 years, people start out in one career and then often swap to this. So it's certainly not just a course for like new graduates. I mean new people coming out of school or coming from directly from school to another course to this. We do have a lot of people that have had full careers. we have a lot of people that have been working in counselling for years and years and years, but they just want to come and get, the qualification to back up their all their experience. So I hope that goes some way to, making you feel you might be in the right place. Jamie, did
And
you want to add anything?
just from a placement standpoint, we it's quite common. We have a lot of mature age students that are coming from other careers, and there's an often sort of it's an unfounded fear that they'll struggle to find placement somewhere because that hosts aren't necessarily looking for someone maybe who is a bit older and changing careers, but the opposite is actually sometimes true. If they value a lot of placement hosts, especially schools, they value life experience. So if
Yeah.
you're bringing that with you, regardless of what your previous career was, it can actually be an advantage. So certainly nothing to worry about on our end either.
Thank you, Jamie. And we had a question for Lisa from Laura, who would love for Lisa to answer this one. So, what does the day-to-day of a counselor look like, and what are some of the most common issues you help patients with?
Oh, we could be here for the rest of my life, Laura. Day to day, if you're working as a counsellor, you usually have, depends where you work. If you worked in a community health, say, I would probably have 6 appointments for the day. If you work in a setting that's more trauma based, like I'm thinking of CASA that does sexual assault, I know they limit to 4 counselling appointments a day because the nature of the issues that the clients are presenting with are so tough. They recognise that you need more space and time to manage that. I also have friends working in private practice that see 10 clients a day, or 12 sometimes. I don't know how they do that. I could never do that. But so it does depend somewhat on where you work and, what you want to do. What was the other part of that question, Jen? The
The
structure.
common issues you help patients with.
Again, I mean, anxiety, depression, even if you don't have a diagnosis, those kinds of common things that most of us battle with symptoms of from time to time. Relationships is a hugely, communicating with other people. Grief and loss that people go through for life, whether it's, bereavement for someone who's passed away, or whether it's, the loss of physical health if you've got arthritis in your knees or something. Um, my work has largely been with these common types of things that we all experience. One of my other jobs was in IVF, where I was a counsellor helping people deal with the grief and loss in IVF. So I guess if you work in a clinic, there might be specific things that you look at, like CASA I was talking about before, they deal with sexual assault. If you're in family violence, you'll be dealing with that. But if you're in a general practice, it'll be anxiety related, grief related, symptoms of depression related probably, and all about relationships, getting on with people. That's a very little snippet there.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. We still have quite a few questions, so I'm just gonna go over them quite quickly here. So someone was asking, what are the pathways for international students to work in Australia after completing the program? So it is a common question we get, but unfortunately, we are not allowed to answer any questions related to giving visa advice. So I would encourage every international student to look up the Department of Home Affairs website in order to get the most up-to-date visa advice, or consult a registered migration counselor, because there are individual cases that we won't be aware of. So you need to check with them how you will be able to work in Australia. But usually, a student who completes 2 years of a master's program should be eligible for a post-study work visa in Australia under the current policy. And our qualification is definitely well regarded in the industry. Someone was asking about if I graduated with a non-related degree, is it possible to do a PhD in psychology or counseling after obtaining the Master of Counseling? So it is possible to do a PhD in counseling after completing the master's, but you do need to have sufficient research experience in order to be eligible for the PhD. And that usually is a thesis, research thesis, and students will have the option to complete a research component, a thesis, in this course, provided that you can prove your academic ability, and that usually is a 75% average in the course in order to continue on to do the research pathway. But for psychology, it is a bit different because you need to study at least 6 years of psychology in order to be a registered psychologist. But for doing the PhD, Lisa, is there anything you want to add about psychology PhD?
So just those, well, the PhD, you can do it in, if you can find a supervisor, you can do it in whatever topic you want. So, but yeah, you're right, Jen. The two units that are the research-based units are a pathway. We've only added those, in the last few years, Jen, is it?
Yeah.
So that's amazing because that does mean that you can go in to do PhD if you want to. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa. Someone was asking, what are the demographics of the cohort? Curious who I would be studying with. That's a very good question. I think usually the course is so each intake we take in about 150 to 200 students. And if it's 150, usually 100, more than 100 will be domestic students. And among international students is really quite diverse. We have students from India, from China, Vietnam, Indonesia, really all over. Yeah, but it is predominantly a domestic course. Anything you want to add there, Lisa, about the cohort?
Um, no, just that we get all ages, all stages.
Mm.
Stages of counselling is different too. Some people are brand new, some people have got lots of experience. So I think we try to build that into the courses, that we try to do enough covering so that if you're new, you'll get the basics. But also if you've been doing it for 20 years, that there's enough room for you to, develop your skills even further, and you can get the level of education that you need. So
Yeah.
yeah, diversity, I guess, age, background, type of support that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. So someone asked a question to clarify about the quota. Is it 150 with 100 local and 50 international? So we don't have strict quotas for this course. That the numbers I quoted was just an example of a recent cohort, but really it depends on how many students apply. We don't specifically reserve how many places for domestic or international. So just apply and everyone will be checked, will be assessed against the same set of criteria that we publish on the course website. So yeah, yeah. Um, Thank you, everyone. And thank you to my fellow panelists who give up their evening to help us answering the questions and sharing their experiences and knowledge. Really appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, wherever you are joining from the world. We really appreciate your time and your interest in studying with Monash. But if we didn't answer your question, well, or you had further questions, or you just want to talk to us about something else, feel free to make an appointment, a one-on-one call or Zoom meeting with us. We do have this service that we provide to any future students or applicants. If you have any questions you want to get further clarification on, feel free to make a one-on-one appointment with us and we'll call you at your nominated time, or we'll have a Zoom meeting with you so we can have a more in-depth conversation to answer your questions. So I think that is all for tonight. Thanks again, everyone, for your time and your interest. Yeah, really look forward to welcoming you at Monash, either in the semester one intake or somewhere in the future.